Hey, Elliot, welcome back.
Yeah, good to be back. A little bit different than your last podcast guest, right?
Yeah, yeah. She was a little better looking.
I agree.
I have to say
Definitely
that.
better looking than me.
Yeah, we usually have what about three or four of these, what is it, in the bag or in the can or whatever the saying is, and we just totally ran out of episodes. So luckily Lori jumped in and man, she was really fighting me on that. She did not really want to partake in the podcast recording, but I twisted her arm and she had a beer for lunch, and I'm like, let's just have a conversation real quick about the mortgage payoff. And she was really like kind of stressing on it, like what kind of questions are you gonna ask me? What do I need to know, and all that. And she's like, well, how long does this need to take? And I'm like, I don't know, like a half an hour. And she's like, are you kidding me? I think it ended up being like 20 minutes of just us talking, and then there was like another 5 minutes of bloopers and my little intro and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I'd like to have her back for more conversations.
That's right. Well, you're welcome, Lori, for that opportunity because I know you were secretly missing it so much. But the real question that I have, Josh, is did you get to see the 311 solo project? His name escapes me at this current moment. Rip his shirt off because clearly that was going to be the highlight of the concert, right?
Yeah, so he only does that with 311. So his name's Nick Hexum, and it's just like the thing that he does. He's a pretty in shape guy, and usually by the end of their set, if they come out for like a little encore, he's usually he gets down to a tank top, and then he takes the tank top off, and he's pretty ripped. And this show wasn't like that though. It was more, he was in a kind of a jacket and button up shirt. He did not go shirtless in this experience.
Too cold for that in Columbia, Missouri in March, huh?
Maybe it was, but we did get a chance to meet him though at the end of the show. He's hung out, and there was only like 100, maybe 150 people there, and they just let everybody kind of line up, walk through, shake his hand, get a selfie. Some people talked to him for a few minutes. We were just like, hey, nice show. Thanks for doing this, carried on with our lives.
Nice. What
Yeah.
was the venue that it was at?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember the name. Oh, Rose something. Rose Amphitheater or something like that. Very
Okay.
small little bar.
Yeah. I was going to say, I don't know too many from back in the day of hanging out in Columbia with friends. Dawn was a graduate of Columbia, so she would probably know more, but the Blue Note is the one that I always remember from back then.
Yeah, I'd say this venue was probably a few blocks from the Blue Note. It was behind Stevens College and that kind of side of town. So, but it was fun. It was good. I'm
Nice.
glad she was able to fill in for you.
Yes,
But
exactly.
let's get to the real topic. So, you were missing in action because you were gone for like a week and a half on your exploratory trip to France. So, let's hear all about it.
Yeah, Dawn and I got to take a trip, just the two of us. So, sans children for really like the first time, or I think it was only the second time since our daughter was born that we got to take a trip together, and especially one of that duration. So, I think we were gone for a total of 10 days. So, we we had a series of flights to get out there. It was, I think, three flights each way, so that was a bit of an adventure in and of itself. Flying to Atlanta, to Amsterdam, to Bordeaux, and then we stayed in Bordeaux for the night before eventually hopping in a rental car and making our way into rural southwestern France. So the village that we spent the bulk of our time in was called Eymet, Eymet, and it's a small village of about 3,000 people. So a quarter of the size of my current that I live in within St. Louis.
It's the about the size of the town that I live in, which is about 35 minutes outside of St. Louis.
Right. So, very different experience than anything that I've ever really lived in. And that was intentional for us, is that we wanted to be in a space that um, you couldn't just blend in per se. If we went to a place like a Bordeaux, that's a much larger city, it'd be very easy to go in and kind of feel very isolated because people don't really have any reason to get to know you unless you're going out there and making a very specific reason to try and build community or build friendship. And obviously out like in France, just in general, they speak French, and that was very much true pretty much everywhere we went. Now I will say there is a fairly large expat community in the town of Eymet, to the tune of, I think the percentage was like 25% in the, it's called the department, which is kind of like a state within the country of France. Of this department was called the Dordogne department. And so I think it's like 25% within that kind of region. So it's well known to British expats, but also Americans, Dutch, various other English speakers.
That was going to be my next question was if they were all English speaking or the majority were English speaking expats.
Yes, I would say as far as the expat community, yes, certainly English speaking. However, you're still the minority there is, you know, French is spoken certainly in all administrative buildings, in schools, in restaurants. However, you did have servers, people that worked at restaurants, etc., that certainly spoke English. So it would just kind of matter from place to place how well, if somebody spoke English or not. So myself and Dawn certainly stumbled our way through our French and tried to convey and communicate as best we could. Um, so got to dust off the cobwebs of our high school and college level French that we still possess.
Nice. And how are you getting around? Did you have a rental car or did you take ride shares or what did that look like? Or
Yeah.
was it public transportation?
So being that it's such a small town, we got a rental car. So we got a rental in Bordeaux. It was a nice Peugeot, and yeah, drove it from Bordeaux across the French countryside. We stopped in a couple of different villages on our way to Aimé. So there's a pretty famous area called Saint Emilion, well known for its wines. So yeah, we stopped there on the way out, had some delicious wine on our way to into the village. Um, Went through other small towns, but yeah, as you can imagine, kilometers as opposed to miles or miles per hour, things like that. Different road signs, all kinds of different things. So Dawn was the sole driver the entire trip. She she would prefer it that way. So I was the passenger princess. So I was completely fine with that.
More wine for you.
That's right. But once we were in May proper, I mean, we pretty much walked everywhere. Where we were staying was in the city center of the town. So we were you could look out our bathroom window and see an old castle ruins basically, or an old fortified encampment was basically like a turret with an old wall and just other ruins that you could literally see from the second floor, or even from, they had a little patio on the back and you could look up and see the fortified ruins right there, which was pretty cool. And then right out the front door, we're right next to the post office, probably 50 yards from your nearest or your first watering hole. That, yeah, it was very interesting to, take in I would say the habits of the locals, right? So everybody's going out for their coffees and their teas in the morning, and literally by lunchtime you're already seeing certainly alcoholic beverages were coming out by that time, and they were very cheap, so I can understand.
So that sounds nice. Is this town not too touristy?
So it actually becomes insanely touristy over the summer. So I guess this is where, like I was saying, based off of the expat community, a lot of retirees or people have vacation homes, things of that nature in the area. So it becomes very, very popular, during that that time of the year in Europe of when people are actually like vacationing. So in France specifically, and I think I mentioned this before, is the schools work in the fact that they go every 6 weeks and then they have 2 weeks off throughout the entire year. And so you have more frequent breaks, but what that leads up to is a shorter summer as opposed to like a 3 month summer in the US. It's only a 2 month summer in France.
Gotcha. So you were going to explore the town as your potential destination. I think you had a reservation to look at a property. You were going to talk to the kids' schools. You had a whole agenda of things that you were looking to do. So tell us how all that turned out.
Yeah. So all those things really went off fantastically. So we went and visited the kids' potential school. We met the principal. I had exchanged emails with him actually in French prior to getting over there. So Monsieur Boutois in Eymet gave us a tour. So yeah, it was very cool to just see what the school was like. He gave us a tour of a few of the classrooms. We were there when kids were there for about 45 minutes, so we got to kind of see how things were working. I got to talk to a few teachers that would be our kids' potential teachers in, the upcoming school year, things of that nature. So, yeah, it was great. Seemed like it would be a really good fit. And then as far as housing is concerned, so the place that we stayed was like just over a block and a half from um, the essentially we had a line on a potential rental for a year. So we got to get a tour of that by the current tenant actually. They've been in that residence for 2 years, and they actually had bought property, so they were getting ready to move out. And so we had talked with the owners, and they had agreed to let the current tenant kind of give us a walkthrough of of the place. So it was interesting that they were renting. It was the property was formerly a B&B. That's what they had used it for, as well as their own residence at one point. But the current tenants were only renting out like half the house basically. So it was a 4 bed, 4 bath place, and they were only renting out half of it. So we didn't get to see the other two except for in pictures, but yeah, we actually got to have a good conversation with the owners, and it seems like it could be a good potential fit.
Did they all speak English?
So the owners actually were British, and so that made things much easier. The French rental is much more difficult. You have to prepare something called a dossier, which is it it's just pretty intensive in all of the, I would say, paperwork, and the same way that you would go through and vet a client before they would move into one of your rentals, it was like that on steroids. So getting to see very extensive financial documents, kind of all the things, especially for being a foreigner. You had to, I think, in a lot of cases for a dossier, you have to have somebody that, like a guarantor for your money, even though you could have plenty of funds. You basically have to pay for a guarantor in addition. So
Hmm.
it makes it much easier if you have like somebody else that doesn't need that same process.
So what's the timeline for them? So they're moving out like pretty soon, and then they would just hold the property for you for the next several months?
Yeah, so it was actually that the current tenant was moving out in April. The owners were going to come back and live in it and do a couple of repairs for 2 months, and they were actually looking to hand over the keys in August, which is kind of like the perfect time frame for us.
Hmm. That's cool. It sounds like it's going to work out well. Is that in the heart of town, or is it a little ways outside of like how far away
Yeah,
is it
no,
from like the city center?
it is right in the city center. It is a 10-minute walk to the kids' school, So it's literally like a minute walk from where we stayed these last, 8 plus days or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, we would certainly have a feel for where we would be and yeah,
Wow,
would
that's
be
pretty cool.
yeah, pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that throughout this whole trip, I mean, it seemed like everything was just falling into place. And that's what I would say is the trip just overall was fantastic. However, what I would say is the probably the biggest thing that came into play onerous the travel is to actually get to the location. And so the biggest reason for us is, like how how likely is it that family and friends come visit us, right? Because sure, it's one thing um, to move to a foreign country, but we wouldn't want to never see our family or friends again. And um, like I was saying, I think at the beginning of this or before we hit record, it was three separate plane trips from St. Louis, and then in addition to that, driving about an hour and a half to get to the town that we were in. So um, it's not a slam dunk, I guess I would say, as far as travel is concerned.
Hmm.
Yes. So, so where that's kind of left us is more contemplation. So I don't think that where I would have said, yeah, we're for sure moving to France before, I think has caused us some pause. Now, I don't know that I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. I'm not saying that it's not, or it definitely won't happen. I think it has just given us pause because, in addition to that, it has been made clear that if I were to stick with my current employer, I also will not be able to do my job remotely. And so as we've talked before, the fact that moving to France would allow us to be Fi right now, or as we called it in the local group, I would be French Fi. That would not be true if we came back to St. Louis. Is the funds that we have right now would not make us Fi by the typical definition of 4% or even truly 5% right now. And that's not even just with an asterisk of, hey, thanks to the market that just is in a bit of a fall due to current events right now. Yeah, I mean, frankly, we've talked about that on previous episodes where it would have been probably another year before we would have been close to what we would have called pretty close to the 5% rule.
A lot of
So
a lot
just
of
a few
questions that
things.
I
Yeah.
have. Yeah.
So go ahead. Fire away.
Okay, so I mean, obviously this has been it was a great trip, not only from the standpoint that you and Dawn were able to be away by yourselves and probably be, have very little distractions, it sounds like, and really think through this. So something came up that I guess probably hadn't even crossed your mind before, in that it's the convenience factor of people getting to you, whether or not that may or may not happen. But I guess my question would be, if you go back to before this trip, what did you envision as far as people coming to visit you? Like, what did that look like?
Sure. So, I mean, I would say it was definitely on our radar of saying how close are we to an international airport. Now, Bordeaux has international flights. There is a closer airport that is more of a regional airport called the Bergerac Airport, which is a town that's only about 30 minutes away from where we were staying in Eymet. However, Bergerac really only flies back and forth to the UK. So there is a flight from, I think it's called Stansted. Don't hold me 100% to that, but essentially there's a flight that only costs like 20 or 30 euro to fly back and forth to the UK. And so theoretically, right, if you could cut down the number of trips to get actually, you know, pretty close to a May from maybe three down to two, I think that's much more tolerable than the thought of taking three legs. Is I think it's certainly doable for us at, in our 30s, but trying to think about, okay, are my parents who are nearly in their 70s going to do this, on at least we would hope an annual basis? I don't know. It is, are we putting a huge financial burden on other friends and family just to come visit us? Those are all the different factors that we were trying to consider. And so I think that's the biggest factor that's weighing on us more than anything else, is just friends and family.
So did you have
Location, 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 right?
yeah. Did you have a vision of, like, number of, I mean, just ballpark number of visits that you would have from people throughout the year? Like, did that kind of thing cross your mind? And was there something that you, like, looked at it, or, felt it and went through the process and you're like, oh, people aren't going to want to do this. So, like, then you started bringing that, number down to where it's like almost zero, or, does that, I
Sure.
don't know if I'm asking the question very well or not, but I'm just thinking that if you were, like, if I was moving to Colorado, or someplace that it's like somewhat, well, very accessible, somebody's just
Right.
going to hop on a plane and potentially come visit me. Now, I don't know. I don't know if my family would even do that. They'd be like, yeah, I don't, you come see us, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's like one of the things when we told my parents about a potential move to France was that it was important to us that they didn't need to feel any sort of financial impact of us moving. So we said, "Hey, we're building it in the budget that, hey, we'll fly you out at least once a year." Um, and I don't even know that they would accept that, but regardless, it's just feeling how it felt to even us being nearly 30 years younger, and just having that day of travel is, I mean, it's a lot. And obviously when you're retired, like hopefully you would do it, you're going to be somewhere for a longer duration, but at the same time, like, I don't know if that's somebody's idea of what they want to do and how they want to live their life. And so that just felt like a lot of pushing assumptions on other people, and it's just adding additional friction to actually come and see us, which, you know, my parents are my children's only living grandparents, and so their cousins are here in town. Everybody that is our real immediate family, like once removed immediate family, is all in St. Louis right now. So the fact that we're going to be like, oh yeah, now you got to travel 12 plus hours to come see us is a little bit larger than the slightly greater than 12 plus minutes it probably takes today.
Yeah. Hmm.
So
That's tough. Yeah.
even a 35-minute commute from Josh may be a far reach to say here's 14 hours to France or whatever.
Well, I was looking forward to coming to see you in France.
Hey, that doesn't mean that that trip still can't happen. You know, by no means, like I said, is it a done deal by any means, but I think we always and I say we just because I get the nice benefits of being married to my wife and father of my kids, being in some form or fashion to an EU citizen. We always have the ability to just go. And so if that just turns into, okay, well, hey, we might spend summers in Europe or whatever, yeah, that's it's fine by me. And just also saying that if the decision is that it doesn't make sense to theoretically move right now, that doesn't discount doing it in the future either. So I
I
don't know.
I can't
Questions
rem
upon questions.
Yeah, and I can't quite remember where we maybe have left off in our conversations on the podcast here, but I know that, and we can certainly cut some of this out if it's not intended to be heard outside of just our local group or whatever, but I know you had talked about wrapping things up with work in the next handful of months, let's say, potentially. That was a real possibility. So you already mentioned that if you were to change your direction on this plan, then you wouldn't necessarily be five for the US. So what are you thinking there? Like if this doesn't happen, are you thinking I'm gonna stick it out for a bit longer, or are you thinking maybe I'll go find something else, or what? You ran through any of those kind of thought
Oh
exercises
yeah.
yet?
Yep, I have ran through those thought exercises as well. So yeah, I mean, obviously, if I come back to them and say, "Oh, hey, actually, that France thing that I told you about, never mind." Like, if they're just cool with continuing on the path that we're on, then I'm not in a position that is so terrible that I can't continue to stick it out for a while, for a reason, for a purpose, right? Now, if things change or if they're like, "Uh-oh, like this guy's a flight risk. He's already told us that his intention is, and maybe we've already started to look for a replacement," like, so be it. I'm I'm not worried enough that I couldn't go find another job or a way to make money. At the end of the day, this is something my dad used to say all the time when I was growing up is it's only money. So job's a job.
And you could do the what is the Jillian Johnsrud thing that's retire often, This doesn't have to be your you can retire now and then maybe go back to work later and retire again.
Hey, exactly. So it's funny that you bring up Jillian Johnsrud. To somebody that I met while I was in France, actually worked for Jillian at one point in time.
Hmm.
So
Really?
random connection, but
Yeah.
yeah,
How did that come up?
yeah, very randomly. This person actually has a whole YouTube channel dedicated to bringing Americans specifically to France, and I didn't really even expect to meet this person while we were out there. We had put out a Facebook post looking to try and kind of meet people in the community, and not even this person, just a guy had said, "Yeah, hey, I'd love to meet you for tea or coffee at this cafe." And we got to the cafe and he said, "Oh, I hope it's okay. I've invited my friend to come join us." And so this person joined us, and throughout the conversation, she was saying some things that had were given the five vibes, and I mentioned it, and she's like, "Oh, I used to work for Jillian Johnsrud." So,
Wow.
uh,
That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
Was the person that you met, was it the same person that you guys had been following on YouTube that you bought the course from and everything?
it was.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. So completely coincidental. I mean, yeah, like if I could have if I could have made that introduction myself, I totally would have. But the same way that YouTube doesn't really, like, it doesn't have a DM feature or anything else like that. So it's not simple in a way to make that connection beyond just dropping a comment and being like, oh, I, I don't even know how you would do that. So unless you're going to go out and be so bold to say, hey, come message me at some location to come make contact. It's so, but yeah,
Oh yeah.
it was very interesting to meet the person. So it was nice.
Yeah, that's really cool. And what might have gotten lost in there a little bit that you're sidestepping is that you hop back on Facebook.
Yes. Yes, I'm having to eat all my humble pie all at once. And the short answer is yes, I am on Facebook, but the only intent was because France really, like, that is their main way of getting information out, and especially in like the small village that we were in, websites for businesses pretty much not a thing. So I'm like, okay, I want to know hours, or I want to know, are you open? So like, this was a very is a very normal thing in France, is that like Sunday, whole village. Well, we were led to believe that like whole villages like shut down. Now, what we actually saw in practice was quite a few of the restaurants were actually open, and I don't know if that was because they have this thing called brocante, which is it's kind of like, I don't know if you'd call it a flea market or you would call it antiquing, whatever, where vendors come out into the market, sell their wares like all day. Beautiful things. It was a lot of fun. So I don't know if because there was a brocante going on Sunday, if some of these restaurants were open just because of that, or if that was normal. But things like the boulangerie, which is like your bakery slash patisserie, etc., they're closed. The fromagerie, where they sell cheeses and meats, they were closed. The butcher closed. Your supermarket was closed. So, so that was Sunday. But then, like Monday, for a lot of, let's say, restaurants, they were closed on that day. So, just getting information, I felt, was very difficult. And also, so this post that I mentioned that Don had introduced to the community, just saying, hey, we'd love to meet some people, I was having FOMO. I'll be real about it. Was I would have to go to her to say, like, oh, like, who's commenting on her stuff, and like, oh, we should go meet this person or that person. And so I made the Zuck happy and got my dosage.
Now, don't tell me you came home and fired back up your Prime membership.
Oh God, it's like you're seeing straight into my soul, Josh. So,
Oh no.
ironically enough, it wasn't when we came home. Now, I don't know the rationale that Dawn turned it back on for some reason. Yeah, I know. It's like I
My jaw
and I told her
just
I'm
hit the
gonna. Yeah,
floor.
I know. So now it is month to month. I'm gonna have to figure out what was the reason because I think we're gonna cancel that right back again. Um, but currently we do have Amazon Prime,
Oh my goodness.
so I
I
know.
was
Like I have, I know you were, and this would be the perfect episode right here to say April Fools on all of
yeah.
this, but it's not. So sadly, I have failed in all of my middle fingers to the billionaires. So
Oh boy.
yes,
Hmm. Well, I'm still holding out. I'm still holding strong here, Elliot. No, no Facebook. I still have my Facebook account, but I don't. I just don't pay attention to it. It's not on my phone. I don't log in on my laptop. I just don't even spend any time. I feel like on the laptop unless it's to do something very intentional like this podcast. So
right.
it's never been something that I waste any time on.
Well,
And
that's good because I mean, I think I will force myself if the decision is truly to be stateside, then it's going to go away again. So this may have been a momentary lapse in judgment, but I will try and go back to holding strong.
yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll keep the conversation going, but it's interesting to hear where you guys are right now. And I imagine you still have a lot of talking to do between the two of you and your family if you decide to have them involved in any way. But
Yes,
I'm,
absolutely. I mean, trust me, it is not lost on us how conflicted we are, we seem, how many conversations it'll be like having to walk back.
just point them to the podcast,
That's
just,
right.
hey, we,
See an episode. Yeah. You want to know? We're gonna use this as a way to drive up membership on the podcast or
that's right.
listening viewers.
I mean, you're being honest and with yourself and with others and with any major decision as new information comes along, you're looking at things from a different perspective, and obviously you're going to have maybe some doubt or whatever, and perhaps even change your mind. I mean, you said that from the beginning. I think that not only was it like the chances were extremely high that you were going to make the move, but then there was also the chance that you may not stay there for very long. So it's always been a sort of a fluid type of decision.
Yes, I fully admit that I try and react to the latest and newest information and make the best decision off of that. And I'm a flip flopper, so what may be perfect information today it may be the complete utter opposite tomorrow. So
I'm that way with sports. I mean, the Cardinals got off to a pretty good start and then they lost. I'm like, I'm a flip flopper too.
yeah, trust me. We were still in France when opening day happened, and we saw that they had won, and I remarked as such to Dawn, and her reaction was pretty spot on. She was like, "It's the best record they're gonna have all season.
That's right.
Batting 1,000."
Yeah. Well,
So
the sad thing is that with my friend, we watched the opening day game together until it got into the sixth or seventh inning, and then they were getting blown out, and we turned it off, only to find out that they came back the next inning and won. So that's the kind of fan I am. I went to
yeah, the fair
bet.
weather fan, huh?
I went to one of my biggest regrets in sports history is that I went to bed in was it 2011 game 6 when David Freese hit
Uh-huh.
the home
Yeah.
run, the comeback. Lori stayed awake and was watching it. I'm like, I can't do this. I'm going to bed. And they came back to win game 6 and ultimately
Oh
won the
yeah.
World Series in game 7.
Yep. I was downtown at a bar. I remember it well.
I remember it well too, but for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right. Do we want to talk about anything else today?
Probably not.
Okay.
As we've done 45 solid minutes just talking about France and Elliot's indecision, so that's
Yep.
probably a good wrap. But if you've stuck along so far, I appreciate it.
Yeah. And stay tuned. There's probably more to come. We'll know where this decision and direction takes us over the next couple of months.
Yeah. All right. Well, it was good talking, Josh. Catch you next
Yep.
time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Elliot. See ya.
See ya.